This meeting is now being recorded.
Good morning, everyone. This is Lenita Hartman. Welcome to the Go For It Community of Practice call for Cohort 3. Ashley Fernie has agreed to join us this morning, and we're really excited to share with you an overview of the tool that you're going to be using to do some self-assessment about practices that you will be putting in place as part of Go For It. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Ashley, and then we will have an opportunity for sharing after. Just really quickly, I want to review our objectives. So this is really your opportunity to learn from each other and gather information from the state team. We're going to go ahead and keep you unmuted. We're getting a little bit of a feedback. You might want to mute yourself, which is *6*, and then unmute as you have questions, because we really want it to be a conversation today. And so really, again, today is to really learn from the state, and at the end we'll benefit from hearing from each other. So go ahead, Ashley.
Thank you. Ashley Fernie here. We're going to talk about the QIO and what that is, what it means, when things will be getting started for you guys. So we'll start talking about what it is. So it's the Quality IFSP Assessment Tool. That's what it stands for. And the purpose is to allow us to assess IFSP quality in a standardized way. So we're really excited to be able to do this because right now we're only able to look at our compliance indicators and the numbers and start dates and that sort of thing. And this will allow us to look at the actual content of the IFSP and as a whole and what we're giving to the family. And then it will also allow us to see all the hard work you guys are doing as part of your Go For It implementation. And the way that we're doing this is through self-assessment and verification. So self-assessment is the use of the QIO at the local level. So that will be you guys using it. And it will allow you to monitor your own quality and identify strengths and needs, and then implement any improvement strategies that you want to internally. And then also identify areas that could support from technical assistance and training. And then verification is the use of the tool at the state level. So we will also be using the assessment tool, and it will allow us to see quality as an entire state and also look at the efficacy of the tool itself. So we're wondering if using a quality tool will alone improve quality. So we're hoping it will be a beneficial training tool just all on its own. And then in the future, it could be part of local status determinations and state and federal reporting, which we're at the very beginning of using it for reporting, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. And then again, help us identify TA and training needs of the state so that we can help support communities. And now the basics. So it's a web-based form that can be accessed through a link. So it looks kind of like a survey. You go through a few pages and then submit it right on the web form. A random sample of IFSPs will be provided to you on a monthly basis, and then results will be provided on a monthly basis as well, but we'll have a 2-month lag. So once you start using the tool, 2 months after that, you'll get your first set of results. Next, how it works. So we have our WH questions, and why, we kind of talked about that. It allows us to assess IFSP quality, identify training needs, and then it's part of our ongoing SIP work as it relates to quality. So it's looking at the Go For It activities and connecting that to the quality improvements that we anticipate seeing and that we already are seeing. Who will use the QIO? So any staff that oversee or manage service coordinators will be doing those self-assessments. So it can be EI coordinator, lead service coordinators, or supervisors. And then we'll also be using it here at the state. And how? It's through FormSite, the web-based tool. And completed self-assessments will automatically be submitted, and then we can review them at any time. You don't have to worry about compiling your results and sending them off to us. We'll have access to them. And how often? It'll be on a monthly basis to start out with, and then we'll assess workload and make sure that's doable for everyone as we move through. And how many? So this will be dependent on your CCB size and the number of initial IFSPs that were completed in the month that we're looking at. So we pull a random sample of IFSPs that were completed in 1 month, and that's what you'll receive to complete assessments on. And right now we're seeing a range from 2 IFSPs to 38 for the larger, which I actually think we adjusted that, and it's closer to mid-20s for the higher end. And the tool is using an analytic rating scale. So the rubric is on a scale of 0 to 4, not acceptable through best practice. And we're really looking for acceptable. And then we just have emerging best practice and best practice to be able to see those areas that you're really excelling in. And then eventually maybe we can work towards moving that way. But to start out, we're just looking for that acceptable criteria because a lot of it is newer requirements as part of our Go For It implementation. And we'll see an example of the scale so you can kind of apply this rating scale we're using to the real-life tool. And we're getting a little bit of feedback, so if you guys don't mind muting yourselves, it's, what is it, Lenita, star 6 will mute you, and then you can unmute yourselves for any questions. Feel free to jump in. And now we'll talk about activities and timelines. So we're breaking out the QIO into its own cohorts. Cohort 1 was the same as the Go For It cohort because everyone was implemented around the same time that we were ready to roll out the QIO. But moving forward, we're going to break out the cohorts depending on implementation date. So a couple of communities from Go For It Cohort 3 will be implementing the QIO with Cohort 2. So here's the list of where we've plugged everyone in. And then here's the timeline. So back in August is when we started testing the first draft of the QIO and received feedback from Cohort 1. They did a lot of work with us and testing and providing feedback and doing that again and again until we got it to a point where we felt like it was a solid tool. And then in April, Cohort 1 implemented the QIO. July, we're introducing it to you guys. August is when we will train and implement Cohort 2. And a couple people from Cohort 3 will fall into that category because you're implementing earlier than your fellow cohort CCDs. And then March, we'll have training and tool implementation. So June of next summer, about a year, is when the first set of results will be available for Cohort 3. And again, we're doing this on a monthly basis, and we're trying to keep it on a schedule. On a Monday. Okay, I'm going to pause for a second and mute everyone because we're still having some feedback.
All guests have been muted.
Okay, so CCBs will receive your IFSP sample list on the second Monday of each month, and then you'll have 2 weeks to complete those. So that's just something to keep in mind as you think about workload and how many people you want working on these self-assessments. So what's next? How is the data being used? What does it mean? What's being reported? So the data is telling us inter-rater reliability. So that means is our CCBs and the state team assessing IFSP similarly? And if so, that means we have similar expectations, and that's what we're aiming for. It's also showing us quality improvement. So we have an overall quality rating that we get from the tool. We also have ratings for each section, so we're able to see if support is needed in one area over another. And then we can also see what % of IFSPs are acceptable or higher. And at this time, we're not using the data for monitoring purposes. However, we've just incorporated this into CSTAT reporting. And the CSTAT measurement is looking at the percentage of IFSPs that have an overall quality rating of 2 or higher. And again, 2 means acceptable. So that's right in the middle of the scale, the 0 to 4 rubric that we're using. Now I'll show you a preview. So the 3 sections of the IFSP that we're looking at for assessment are the family assessment, global outcomes, and IFSP outcomes. So we rate each of those sections and then take the average for the overall quality rating. And here is an example of what the global outcomes section looks like on the QIO assessment tool. So you'll get a purpose of that section, an example, and then you'll see not acceptable through best practice. And we haven't included those in-between ratings just to simplify it a little bit. But you know, if you've checked multiple items in not acceptable and acceptable, then down at the bottom you can apply an overall rating of somewhat. So that's why we've accounted for a scale 0 to 4. And then we also have missing required information on the left-hand side. And if anything is missing, it's mostly things that are blank, then you can't rate that section anything other than a 0. And then all pages of the assessment tool have some scoring reminders. So again, if missing required information has been checked, you can't rate higher than 0. It also pipes in the areas of delay and the age of the child at IFSP development, so you can keep that in mind as you go through rating. And that's it. Does anyone have any questions or comments? And actually, let me unmute you really quick, or feel free to type in.
All guests have been unmuted.
Hi, it's Jeannie. When did you say this process starts?
So Strive, let me go back to the timeline really quick. Sorry.
So it's going to depend on which, so it's going to be a kind of a QIO cohort that you'll be in. So depending on which cohort you're in is when your timeline will be.
So Strive, you'll be part of QIO cohort 3. So we'll start training March of next year.
Laura Barat asked if do you have an anticipated date for the August training?
We do not. I'm going to be sending out a doodle poll. We just wanted to wait until we at least introduce the QIO to those that haven't heard of it yet before sending that out. So I'll actually send that out today, and we'll get something on the schedule that works for everyone. Any other questions?
So this is Juanita. I don't know, in terms of if you're starting to kind of think about how this can happen within your CCB, really you have the flexibility to think about the leadership within your community in terms of who you want conducting these ratings on a monthly basis. So it could be the EI coordinator, it could be a lead service coordinator supporting the EI coordinator. So you have the flexibility to figure out who you want to participate in the training that will be actually conducting ratings.
Mm-hmm. And Laura wants to know if it has to be a supervisor.
It has to be someone that manages or oversees service coordinators. And the reason for that is because we don't want people that are writing the IFSPs to be assessing their IFSPs as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so what about like go for it leads or trainers or kind of other identified leads in their community, even if they're not supervisors?
If they're not writing IFSPs.
And I think that would be fine, and maybe that's a conversation we could have with Amanda also, but as long as it's somebody that has a solid understanding of the expectations for the IFSP, it shouldn't matter if they are direct supervisors of service coordinators or not.
Laura Vratt said most lead supervisors also write IFSPs. So I think probably the best thing to do is just when your community is starting to go through that process is to have a conversation with Ashley, Fernie, and Amanda and explain maybe who you're going to be identifying in your community and if that is going to be a good fit or not.
Yeah, and we do have some of the extra small CCBs where it's just not possible to have someone other than the person writing the IFSP assessing. And so those are just considerations we have to take into account and make adjustments for. So we can definitely work with you to make sure it's going to be feasible.
Well, and for service coordinators that might be writing IFSPs, but there's someone else who could do an assessment, maybe the understanding would be they wouldn't be assessing their own if they have the flexibility for their supervisor to do theirs.
Right.
Because it's a random poll.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not, from month to month, you're going to have different samples of IFSPs.
Yep.
And this is a new process for all of us, so we have the expectations that we start with, and those might be adjusted as we go through just to meet the needs of everyone. So we're definitely flexible and want to talk with each community to help make it as painless as possible and beneficial for everyone.
Laura asks, and some communities are doing this, what is the average time one takes?
So the average time one takes once you've become familiar with it is about 15 to 20 minutes per assessment. And we are noticing that as the quality gets better, it's taking a little bit longer because there's more content to read. But I would say around 20 minutes. Once we have a manual to go along with it with some reminders. So when people are starting out and referencing that on each page, it was taking a little bit longer, I think closer to 30 minutes.
And again, just to reiterate, today's the introduction and the overview, and you're going to have a more in-depth, comprehensive training on how to actually do it. And the form is super easy to use, which is really nice.
Yeah, we've had really good feedback from the communities that are using it, and they're really excited about it. So I hope everyone feels the same way once we actually get started with it, and we'll go through it together and do some examples together and test it out before you actually are using it.
Another question from Jean Larson. It says, this is a bit off topic, but is there anyone out there that is doing supervision by one provider for another, example, SLP, supervising, and SLPA. Are you asking the community, Jean, or I guess I'm a little also unsure of what your question is referencing to.
We have a speech therapist providing supervision for an SLPA, and I was just asked to ask the community if anybody else is doing that, someone they could contact about how it's going and compare notes.
Does anyone have any providers in their community or kind of a situation like that that can connect with her? Do you know?
We can reach out to other communities because that's definitely a fairly common practice, actually. So we can reach out and see. I'm guessing developmental pathways could give you some support and direction. I know they couldn't be on the call with us today, but they generally have SLPs supervising SLPAs, and that would be Michelle Coates.
And Margaret Davies said that they've done this in the past also. So no.
Great. Margaret, would you be willing to talk with Jeannie about this?
I will get 3 time cards this week. I will.
And you're unmuted, so
you can talk.
I think you can. if you talk a little louder, I think we could hear you. Sure, she'll email her.
Yeah. Okay. Great. If you did press star 6 star, you might need to press it again to unmute yourself. Okay. Any other questions for Ashley around the QIO?
No.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Ashley. We appreciate it. The next portion of our call today, we just want to hear from you how your communities are doing. If you want to provide some updates on where you're at in the process or maybe things that you're working on within your individual communities to share with your other people in your cohort. So if we want to start with updates from community options.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, this is Margaret with Community Options. We've doing our universal training for the Go For It on Tuesday, this next Tuesday, the 25th. And we have, since our May 2nd and 3rd trainings, we have formed an implementation team and have also put together our own little Padlet so that it sort of mirrors what our area, our CCB, our child finds are coming, where they can come together and just put on this Padlet what they're doing, when they introduce early intervention to the families. So that is a work in progress right now.
So for material sharing?
Correct.
Great.
Which each child find is doing for their area.
Fantastic.
Sounds good. Just a question. How I guess I'm just curious on how that was kind of received as having your own your own Padlet. Everyone's open to that and is accessing it, you think, or?
We are, we do go to the main, I think with the Go For It Padlets, we are taking documents from there that we are wanting to look at and consider for like our welcome packet.
Mm-hmm.
And, so we are looking at, what is out there already, and we've gotten a lot of good, good examples of what we do want to use, but also kind of do some more, look at our individual areas and see if Child Finds may have, we're putting what their intake form looks like, those type of things.
Great. It's a great idea. All righty. How about from DDRC? I think I saw Mickey on here, or I don't know. Do you have any updates for?
Okay, DDRC is here.
Yep.
Yay.
Joy, Mickey, and I are on the line.
Good.
So our community visit is scheduled for August 8th and 9th, and our training is September 26th. So we're still in the process of doing our community mapping, and we'll get the required information you need prior to the community visit to you early next week. Or no, most of it will get to you. We have our last implementation team meeting before the visit on next Wednesday. Get that to Wayla. I don't know that we have any thing to add or share at this point.
How is your community mapping going, Susan? Are you guys feeling like you're getting a good sense of what's actually happening at DDRC right now?
Definitely. We've had good participation. People are really engaged in the implementation team meetings to identify who's doing what. While we're going through it, we're identifying things like, this might be an area we'll want to improve or change. We might need more people here. We've already identified some things that we potentially want to look at changing. Certainly the concern we continue to have is meeting our 45-day timeline. Our child find evaluations are occurring very late. Even we've separated out the child find eval from the family assessment ISSP. It's two separate meetings, but our child find evals are currently occurring at that 45th day. So that's our biggest concern for our community, for our Jefferson County evaluations and families.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an area we've spent a lot of time on, trying to figure out how to impact that. But as far as Go For It, I think we're in good shape to be able to implement that into our process, and everybody's on board with that, being part of that. Do you want to add it?
Susan, just quickly, I have another question related to how you're structuring your implementation team, because you have, your Jefferson County folks for DDRC as well as Summit County. And do you have just one large implementation team?
Yes.
Or are you treating Summit separately? How's that looking?
We have one large implementation team. We've had, certainly the vast majority of people we serve are Jefferson County school districts, so we have representatives there. Then we have our Summit County team, a representative from Clear Creek Child Find and Boulder Valley School District, who only does a few each year, but they've been participating. We haven't had specific participation from Gilpin County, but we're checking in with them. That'll be part of the write-up. We're pretty familiar with those smaller communities. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. And developmental pathways is not, okay. So let's move on to Eastern. I think I saw both Katrina and Vicki. Do you want to share an update?
Sure. I'll let Katrina and I both will share updates because I think, as everybody's aware, we kind of split this a little bit. So the 9 counties are sort of in one implementation team, and Albert kind of doing theirs and then working together as one community center board, obviously. And Katrina was at our universal training, and she can talk about how they're doing their universal training for her Albert folks. I don't think we've talked since we had our universal training. It went really well. Laura and Monique did a wonderful job. I think people were very and excited about it. Some people had questions about how it was all going to work, but I think that in general it was a very positive experience, and we all thought it was really wonderful to be able to come together and be together because we're so spread out that just hardly ever happens. Even getting service coordinators together is difficult when you have such a large area. We had a lot of good discussion about how this will roll out in each, I don't know whether to call it a community, each administrative unit, each child find area. There's really 6 to 7, depending on how you divide those up. So we're still really talking about that, about how people want to do that. And service coordinators are leading that discussion with their child find groups. And I'm not sure that we've come to a final decision in any area about how to do that. Our implementation team is meeting regularly, and we're discussing standardized intake forms, working on coming up with one of those. We're using some examples from different CCBs, mostly the one Envision had. We're practicing using the global outcomes in conversations, the talking points, just some of us keeping those right on our desk to remind us, or taped up above our computers or something to remind us to use those. Working on improving captive referrals, working with the different DHS. There's 10, and some of them have very, very new caseworkers. So working with them to get complete information, that sometimes really slows down our CAPTA process. To not have all of that. I mean, sometimes not an address or a phone number on them. We're also working within our CCB to have a standardized termination form, and Katrina's been looking at that. And I don't know, Katrina, what else do you want to add to that?
Just wanted to thank DDRC for letting our Elbert County team join them for their Universal Training Day. I appreciate that. I think that's really the only other additional thing I have to share.
Great. You guys are super busy.
Yeah.
All right. How about Foothills Gateway?
Hi, this is Elise talking. I'm one of the board team leads. Hi, everyone. So things have been going really well. We had our universal training back in April, and we had our private eval team members, providers attend that. And since we've kind of developed an internal training that really embodies everything from universal training and also Foothills Gateway's internal processes. And we are working on training all of our providers on that right now. So we probably have about half of our providers trained, and we're anticipating here certainly by the end of August that everyone would be trained on the new process. And so far we've had a really positive response with everyone. Service coordinators are really happy with how things are going. Providers have been really supportive, and working really well with everyone. So we've been really happy about that. And since June 1st, we've gone for full implementation of Go For It. So we've had almost 2 months now that we've been doing that, and everything's going really well.
Wow. I have a question, Elise. You said you're hoping to have your providers trained by August 1st. That's both, because Foothills Gateway has both contracted providers and internal providers, right?
No, they're all contracted providers. We just have a group of individuals from each discipline that are the only ones who do the private eval for kids who are categorically eligible or can't meet the 45-day timeline. So we had them kind of be the front runners who went to universal training, and they've been the ones who have been kind of starting that process, leading the process. And then we will have the rest of the providers trained on the process by the end of August.
Great.
You've been go for it-ing.
All right. How about an update from Horizons?
Hi, this is Susan. I'll start, and Lindsay Gary is on the call as well if she has anything to add. We have not yet had the first meeting of our implementation team, and we're, similar to Eastern, pulling people from multiple counties. In our case, only 5. But it turned out to be a little tricky to schedule a summer meeting. So we have our first meeting scheduled for the 2nd of August, and our focus will be on forms and ensuring that we're all using the most current versions and all the same forms. But we have other to-do lists that we compiled when Monica and Wayla were here, so we'll be starting to work on that. We have our universal training scheduled. All of our providers are employees, and it looks like they will all be able to attend, but that's not until the 5th of October. We just recently scheduled a date in August. It's the 24th, when we'll get some additional training from the EI team on family assessment and the costs. And we're very excited about that. And I didn't know whether you wanted to mention that you intend to open it to other CCBs.
Oh, yeah. I think once, you and I can kind of figure out the details of those things, we'll be able to share more of that information.
Okay. I think we're close.
Okay.
So that's an extra training date, and we're really grateful that you guys are willing to come up and do that one-day combination training for us. Probably the only other update is that in 2 of our 5 counties, we do the child find evals through a contract with BOCES. And we're really excited. This is just late-breaking news that our BOCES in Rio Blanco County is planning to contract with us to do the child find evals there. And we're really happy about that. So that's and we should have a contract with them, hopefully within the next week.
Oh, good. I'm so glad to hear that, Susan. I know that that's been something, that you've been working on hard in your community and talking about. So I'm glad that was able to get worked out.
Yes.
I think just to kind of share with some other communities so they can have a sense of some of this work that you've been doing is really where we started was Rio Blanco wasn't interested in even participating in your Go For It activities or learning about the integrated process. And so you've shifted from a real challenging situation to now taking over evals for Rio Blanco and having control of what your quality process looks like. So hooray for you guys.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for even remembering that little history there. But yeah, that's exactly what happened.
Yep. Well, great. Lindsay, did you have anything else you wanted to share with?
No, not that I can think of. Susan did a great job updating, but I'm excited to hear about Rio Blanco. That is late breaking.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
Well, great. All right, and Strive. Any updates?
Hi, Katie and Nancy. Well, we'll be contacting Foothills, no doubt, for how to train some of our providers that aren't able to make these trainings with us, because that is something that has us a little wonder. We're very grateful that we only have one county, and we don't have the number of providers to train that a lot of you guys do. But right now we're looking at scripts to use with families, updating our brochure and our website to include the Go For It language. We're looking forward to having a TA training on our family assessments and how to write outcomes, combining those two and making them work well for our providers and our service coordinators and our families. We're shortly we'll be working with the Child Find team to update our intake forms and the team reports and assessments so that everybody's on the same page about Go For It language also, so the family gets a consistent message. And I think that's pretty much it, other than finding a new venue for our August 29th meeting, which we're still working on.
For your universal training?
Yes.
And Jeannie, I want to just call out what an asset you have in your community, in your Child Find. I was so impressed when Laura and I came out, just how engaged your Child Find representative was and how knowledgeable about early intervention. So you really have an ally and a partner in your Child Find. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Sandra's very involved in making sure we all stay on the same page with our families, and always has been, not just about the Go For It, but always just making sure the process seems to be working. There's been a lot of communication back and forth.
And I think we should also call out Strive for the number of family members they've had participate in this process. There were two different parent representatives as part of your implementation team when Laura and I were out there, and I think two were absent. Is that correct? That are going to participate?
Well, I'm not sure that they will be able to join us, or if we'll just keep it at the two, but that's what we have right now. We'll find out closer to our implementation meeting.
That'll be some great feedback and information to, or perspective, also to hear about that. So yeah, that is great. And
I think our greatest challenge right now is still the length of meeting times, or the number of meetings, in order to keep them within a time frame that we have with parents to fully implement an ISSP. That's something we're continuing to struggle with.
Mm-hmm. Does anyone on the call want to weigh in about how meeting length is going for folks that have implemented the new process? I'm kind of putting you on the spot, Foothills Gateway, since nobody else has.
Elise, are you still with us?
Oh, Jody.
I would speak for Heather. She's not here, but what I know from her team is that as providers are starting to use the MISER costs alongside the meeting, it's going faster. And it just took practice. So, it felt cumbersome in the beginning, and now things are just flowing. So I think that's just time is what makes the meeting a little shorter. And then sort of updating their intake a little bit and asking some of those kind of routine questions. I think we don't want to put a ton of time into a kid that won't qualify. I hate to say it that way. So I didn't want them to do too much in an intake, but they just changed it a little bit, and that's made a difference.
So they have some organizing information up front to carry forward.
Yeah, and so by the time they get to that initial staffing, between having done an intake with the family, having talked to the eval team or read some reports, and then made that meeting, they've organized a little bit about what they're going to, put into the routine, and then the provider is sitting there with the MISER cost as they're doing the initial staffing, getting more information that's automatically plugging into those areas, those 3 areas. So it's getting the providers away from just using their area development and looking at those 3 global outcomes. And so then that language is plugging in faster.
Fantastic.
So when you say faster, can you tell me what that means to you? Like, are we talking 45 minutes or an hour and a half?
We always plan for an hour and a half meeting. It often does not take that long, but that's getting into the house, greeting, getting set up, and leaving the house. All that takes some time too.
Jody, this is Mickey at DDRC. So it's an hour and a half. You also complete a family assessment in that time frame and the MISER course?
Yep. Mhm.
What tool are you using for the family assessment?
The SAFER.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. And what's happening when I observed is they're doing the family assessment, and as they ask the question about the feeding time, then the provider might be asking some questions off of the MISER that is about that time of day. So they're doing them simultaneously. They're just doing them in the order of the family's routine instead of in the order of like the eval or the 3 areas of development. And they're getting plugged in as they do the family assessment.
Sure. Well, we're using the SAFER also, and, we've got a good family assessment process. I'm just trying to visualize how fitting the MISER course in all of that works within the time frame of an hour and a half.
Yeah, so the service coordinator is doing the family assessment, and the provider is using the MISER.
And this is Laura. I was able to go out and observe at StarPoint a little bit, and they really do have it down to just a really smooth process. So the family assessment is still really driving the process, and the provider is scoring the MISER costs, asking some additional questions in the context of the routine, and then what I observed is that it really helped their global outcomes rating process go smoothly.
Right, because it's already age anchored for you, so you're just seamlessly moving into being able to do the rating.
Because it's not a different process. To be able to do those things simultaneously. And I think, the important thing is to have those conversations and know, the role and of who's doing what and the flow of that meeting so that it can be a little more cohesive instead of disjointed is very helpful.
Some of the things we've seen is that if we go over like an hour out with a family, it gets pretty hard on the kids, especially in a multiple kid family, because they like to be the center of the attention, and for that period of time, they're not. Have you had ways of overcoming that, or are you meeting with parents without the kids? How's that working?
We definitely prepare the family for what the meeting is going to look like. So, obviously not everyone can organize child care or another parent to take the kiddos, but we tell them up front what the meeting's going to look like, and that has made probably the biggest difference. Obviously, there's sometimes where it's just horrible. And you come back to the office and you're like, did we get everything we need? I hope so. But I think prepping the families is our biggest proactive piece that we do.
And are you able to bill for your provider time if the child's not present?
Can you repeat that?
Oh, definitely.
Can you bill for your provider's time during that meeting if the child's not present?
Yeah, there's a billing for initial staffing on the code for that for the state billing, right?
Yeah.
Hey, Laura.
Laura?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Hey, Laura. Laura, can you hear me?
Yes.
Roanna.
Uh-huh.
Hey, I had a question. The other day when I saw you, you were telling me about some of the larger communities that had been implementing were going to 2 meetings, and I wanted to clarify, was that 2 meetings after the child find evaluation?
No, 2 meetings where the child find evaluation is first.
Okay, so it wasn't like they were doing the split process.
That's correct.
Okay, because I thought maybe I understood you to say that it was 2 meetings after that, but that's not
Now,
true.
some communities are just on an individual basis, like, when the family just runs out of time or the correct people can't be there. But no, in general, the 2-meeting process considers the evaluation as the first meeting.
Okay. And on average, do you feel like for most people that have been implementing it for a while that they're doing it in an hour and a half or 2 hours? Or do you
That
know?
second meeting for people that have been implementing a while, and all of you guys in the earlier cohorts chime in, but I would guess an hour and a half.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that it depends and it varies by community. I think some communities are reporting that it's just a little bit longer than their old process was. Now that their service coordinators and providers are in a groove, that it's very close to what it was previously.
Okay, thank you.
I know for us, the meeting that got longer was the periodic review. I feel like those used to go pretty snip. Have they met the goal? They haven't. Okay, let's do a few updates. And now we're making those periodics a much more comprehensive meeting.
That's a really good point.
Oh, all right. Are there any other questions or discussions that you guys would like to have as a group or thoughts at all? No? All right. Well, our next call...
Oh, wait, this is Jody. I do have one more question to see if anybody else is experiencing something. We have several child signs that are using the DAISY for evals, and they are saying there's kind of a misstep when they do the age anchoring using the DAISY, which we've asked them to do as part of the process. It looks, the standard score seems high, and the percentile seems high, but the age anchoring seems low based on their eval scores. And I'm wondering if anybody else has had anybody report any issues with testing and the age issue.
We've just noticed that I'm not sure if this is what you're talking about, but the age scores in the center of that summary sheet do not always match well the age scores found by the assessment team.
Oh, you mean like on the drop down in the actual IFSP, the Go for IFSP?
Yes. The center column that just went live with this last update.
Right.
Yeah, those scores, a lot of times we're breaking between two of those. So when you look at it, either it looks low or high instead of right in the middle. So we just make the comment off on the right-hand side, the summary section.
Yes, that's exactly what you should be doing right now. And I know that's something Ashley Ness is working on in the drop-down. So you would select one, and then in the comments you would put that it's straddling the two different ranges there.
So this is more like they're using an evaluation tool, and we've asked them to give us the child's age, developmental age based on, and so they're working with us on that. And some of the tools, they can use their score, their raw score, to get an age equivalency for the child, and they've switched to doing that instead of giving us like a percentile rank. But they're saying it'll look like age anchoring, the child has a 25% delay, but on a standard score and on the percentile, it looks like they're in the 20th percentile. They're struggling with that whole age piece. When we used to, just take whatever their eval was, they're trying to work with us really carefully and give us age equivalencies, but they're feeling like it's not matching up. So I'm starting to research this, but I didn't know if anybody else had experienced that with their child find team.
Well, I think we've heard feedback in general that sometimes there are challenges with the DAISY. I think every child on the planet would probably qualify in the area of fine motor. So, that's where I think the informed opinion of delay also comes in too. I mean, they need to just take the DAISY as one piece of the body of evidence. It's not the only piece, right?
Right. So they can also use their opinion and parents' opinion and other things.
Sounds like they're okay.
Right.
To get that age, equivalent.
Right, because they still have to give you percentage of delay. And they, so now they're doing percentage of delay and age range. So that's where they're having the discrepancy is between the percentage of delay and the age range.
The discrepancy comes like when they do the standard score from the test and it gives them a percentile. They're kind of remembering the old, preschool 7th percentile or below because they also test preschoolers. And they're saying this child shows a 25% delay if they do the math based on the age range, but if they go by percentile, it looks like the child's in the 16th or 20th percentile. And so it's partly the tool, but I want to have a thoughtful discussion with the child find teams around that.
Yeah, I think that this is something, I'm glad you brought it up, Jody, and I think it's something we need to have more discussion about because I really do think it's the tool itself.
Okay, so a lot of our folks are using the DAISY.
Mm-hmm.
And they're struggling with it now that we've asked them to do age, and they've been said, yeah, no problem, the DAISY has that. And now they're coming back to me saying, this is not a great match when we do a report. Yeah,
so we should maybe pull a couple examples and work through it and see if we can think about a workaround for that. But for now, I really think, incorporating an informed opinion of delay is also going to be a piece of that.
Great, I'll start with that, and I'll be a part of any work group you pull for that issue.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, guys. So just a reminder, the next Community of Practice call is August 17th, and it will be with cohorts 2 and 3. I just want to thank all of you for all the information that you shared today. I feel like this was a good conversation and some good updates. So thank you all for participating and sharing with us, and we look forward to talking with you in August.
And thanks, Ashley, for joining us, and we'll all expect to hear from you.
Yes, I'll send out a survey, and if any questions come up in the meantime, feel free to reach out.
All right.
Have a great day.
Thanks. You too.
Thanks. You too.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.